Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. It's been a wild week here. We are finally in the midst of our rainy season. And once again, it's chilly and wet outside, which actually means things are starting to slow down slightly because it's getting too wet and cold and nasty to play around out there with landscaping. But enough about that. Let's see. Today is an open Q&A, and I've already got 6 questions off to the side, and that's all good. But faithful channel member, Dwayne Ruthig threw me a question over on Facebook that I'm going to go ahead and answer now. And his question was about um, job sheets in VCarve Pro. So let me go ahead and we'll bring up Aspire. And I have a project loaded that has tool paths. It's just a little connecting rod that when I had to cut out a new connecting rod for my wife's spinning wheel, I drew it up in here real quick and then cut it out on the CNC. So we go up to tool paths and then come down here to create job sheet. Now this is Cut 2D Pro, VCarve Pro, and Aspire only. Cut 2D Desktop and VCarve Desktop does not have support for creating job sheets. So you'll come over here and click Create Job Sheet, navigate to the folder you want to save that job sheet in, and you see it saves it as an HTML file, which will, generally speaking, open with your web browser. And click Save. Now, Dwayne's question was, if I come in here and I change a toolpath and generate a new job sheet, is there any way to have it just generate the changes, or it's going to generate a whole new job sheet? And unfortunately, Dwayne, the answer to that is no, it's going to generate a whole new job sheet. So let me go ahead and bring that job sheet up and we'll see which, yeah, I figured as much. It would open up over there. So about the only thing you can do, Dwayne, is if you print your job sheets, about the only thing you can do is control which pages are printed. So if you come up here, go to print, you can, I have mine set to save as a PDF file. It'll save here to my desktop, but this is a 2-page job sheet and you can select which pages get printed. But unfortunately, there's no way to modify or detail which page of the job sheet gets created. So it's just one of those cases. Let's go ahead and cancel out of that. So you're basically limited to what you print, but it's going to generate an entirely new job sheet and add pages or take them away as necessary. So I hope that answers that. I mean, it's not. Let's see here. The issue is not on this sheet. The problem is it creates a new one for each sheet. Well, the job sheet should create for the entire file, not just individual toolpaths. So, or is it going back to old projects that you have in your project list and creating job sheets for them as well? Because that's a bug within the software, and for that, I would certainly send a email to Vectric support. That's weird. I'm waiting for a little bit of clarification. That's why we're okay. It creates a separate job sheet for each sheet in the project. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Okay, I get it now. I see what you're saying. All right. Okay. Uh, Let me bring this back up here. What Dwayne is saying here is that over here in his sheets tab, he's got more than one sheet. And it creates a new job sheet for each sheet he has here. Wow, that one I do not know. Um, if you just make a modification to one sheet in the entire project, it's creating job sheets for every sheet in the project. Yeah, I would on that. Wow, I hadn't even considered that. I would get a hold of Vectric support. This may be something they need to add in a revision to allow you to choose which sheets it's going to create a job sheet for. Now I get what you're saying. And Michael Mazalik confirms it here. He says the software looks at the entire project, not just one sheet here, there. Yeah, that is, yeah, I see what you're getting at now. No, sounds to me like we need to start flooding support at vectric.com with emails requesting we pick and choose which sheets, or at least have that option. Maybe they can add that on an update to the software, because yeah, I can see where that would be a major problem. Because if you've already got everything, then again, there is a workaround in that if you print out your job sheets, you can pick and choose what pages you print out. So that may be a workaround, that may not be a workaround, because again, I mean, it's going to. Now, let me ask you this about that, Dwayne, and I simply don't know because I've not had to do it. And that is, does it create one single HTML file for the entire project, or does it create separate HTML files for each sheet? I would imagine probably just one HTML file, because if it's not recognizing which sheet when it goes to create it. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. That's a good suggestion. So, okay, each sheet is a separate HTML file, really? Okay, well then, if that's the case, um, then you can just choose not to print those other HTML files. I get it. It fills up a folder with extraneous crap that you really don't need. But you can just, after it's done, you can just delete the other HTML files. But yeah, that is a good suggestion to make, to allow you to pick and choose which ones. Delete the other sheets, then make a new job sheet. You could do that, or you could import the vectors and tool paths off of one sheet into a new file. Still, that's a lot of going around your foot to get to your elbow, so it's yeah, that would be a good suggestion to make to Vectric. That's that would be a very good suggestion to make. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you than that, Dwayne. It's just not something that. Okay, let's see. The problem for me is that I save each sheet in a separate folder, and when it recreates the job sheet, it saves it into the current folder. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, right now you're just going to have to go back and figure out which sheet is which and put it off into different. Now, there's one advantage there to using the print to when I go up here and come on. When I go to print, I save as PDF because then I can save whichever pages I want. So like I could say page 1 and 2 into the first folder, then for example 3 and 4 into the next folder, etc. You might get some of the previous project, but well, I doubt. No. Yeah, I doubt that. No, you could work around that, but yeah, that's one of those cases that it should be made a lot easier. So, let's see. Okay, Brooks says, I just created a job sheet for a 10-sheet project and generated 2 job sheets. Well, maybe you two need to get together because I have not yet found a way to save more than 1 job sheet. Now, it's possible you have something in your settings to where it's separated by size of the document, but even then, I'm not sure. So, let's see here now. Michael Mazalik says, I just did a 3-sheet and it made 3 job sheets. Okay. All right, let's see here. There are 2 people asking the same question. Ozguzzi and LB Sharp asking, does the modeling resolution affect the CNC cut? The short answer is yes. The long answer is stick around. When you get into, let's get into a different session of Aspire. What they're talking about is here in job setup, where we enter single-sided or double-sided or rotary and get our size and everything. It's down here under modeling resolution. Now, if you look down here under modeling resolution, mine is set at standard. Now, let me share my screen with you. Sorry. Over here in job setup. And Daryl, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. $10 super chat. Right on. You the man, Daryl. Okay, we're talking about right down here under modeling resolution, and right now it's set to standard, fastest. Now, if you look right below that, it's very faint, so you may not be able to read it, but if you look on your software, you'll see it. And right now it says 1 million points. That means that it has taken this piece of material and it's divided, in this case, this 18 by 18 inch piece of material into 1 million points. Think of an image file where you have individual pixels. It's basically divided up this piece of material into pixels. If I switch it to high, 3 times slower, now it says 2 million points. So it's divided this up into 2 million pixels. If I switch over here to very high, it's 4 million points. So we're now divided up into 4 million pixels. The more pixels you have on that same piece of material, the finer the level of detail you're going to have on that piece of material. Okay? Depending upon what you're carving, you may want more detail, you may want less detail. It just depends on what's going on. And this is where you're going to have to use your judgment. If it is something like a 2-foot diameter barn star that you're carving, and you're going to be using a 1/4 inch end mill, you don't need a whole heck of a lot of detail to do that. So using very high for that situation is probably not going to help you much at all. It's not going to be any advantage to you. So um, basically, you're going to need to decide on how much detail you need and whether or not you actually want that much detail. If the smallest bit you have is a 1/8 inch end mill and you're doing something like here, an 18 by 18, you're not going to get a lot of superfine detail with a 1/8 inch end mill. On the other hand, if you're doing something very small that you're going to hold in your hand a lot, say a piece of jewelry, or you're cutting a wax mold to cast a piece of jewelry, for that you need extremely, extremely high detail. And because you're going to be using tiny, tiny, tiny bits, then you'll need to, number one, set up your job for something very small. And number two, go for the highest amount of detail you can get. Okay. Now so the short answer is yes, it does affect the cut. It does affect the resolution on the of the carving because it divides up the clip art. Let me go ahead and save this at very high. It will divide up your model into fewer pixels or more pixels, which means the level of detail is going to be much, much higher than if you went with just standard resolution. And you can see that for yourself in your preview or in your 3D view. Your um, simulation will look pixelized. So let's see here. We've got a lot of questions coming in. And I'm going to try like crazy to get to them all, but no guarantees. And no, Donna, I had not got to your question yet, so you did not miss it. So let's go on. Now, LB Sharp says, I thought it was just a preview option, not the toolpath. No, it doesn't have anything to do with the toolpath. It has to do with the resolution of the model being imported. Okay. So it's you know, uh, it's kind of like if you import picture it this way. If you import a image into your imaging software that is 600 pixels by 800 pixels, and you blow that up to 8 by 12, it's going to be pixelized like mad. But if you take a model that's, or excuse me, an image that's 5,000 by 12,000 and blow that up to 8 by 10, it's going to be less pixelized because the resolution of the image is sharper. The pixels are smaller. Now, there's a caveat that goes along with this in that you can only, you need to have that set when you first create your job. Okay. You need to have that set when you first create your job because let's say I have this on standard resolution. If I have this on standard resolution and I import something, then decide that's not enough detail and go back into job setup and change that resolution, it does not change the resolution of the model. Okay. you'd have to delete the model and re-import it. Once the model's there, the model's there at whatever resolution you had set here from the get-go. So, also, this modeling resolution is for 3D models only. It has no effect on it doesn't have any effect on a profile, has no effect on a pocket, no effect on a VCarve, no effect on anything but a 3D model. So if you're not 3D carving, set that at standard, because there's no need for you, if you're not doing it, don't have a 3D model in it, there's no sense in having that set that high. Okay. Now, if you're talking about in your 3D view, after you've calculated your toolpath and you're over here in the preview, if you're talking about that, then what you're going to be looking at is up here under toolpaths, preview simulation quality. This is the quality of the image you're going to see out here in your preview screen. Now, a lot of people will just automatically jump to 25x slower maximum because they want to see the absolute best. You notice I have mine on high. This affects how long it takes for that toolpath to calculate and for that toolpath to run when you're running a simulation, when you hit preview selected, preview all, or preview visible. This affects how long it takes for that preview to render. And believe me, I had it set at 25x, and my channel members can tell you it was excruciatingly slow. So that's another trade-off. Now, if you're going to be sending a preview image to a client, I would go for something like this on that render, then do, preview all your toolpaths, then save the preview image. But for you just checking it out to preview it, to make sure the toolpaths are doing what they're supposed to be doing, I don't need that high. And if I do, I'll change it for that particular toolpath, then come back here. And again, this is under the toolpaths menu, preview simulation quality, and there it is. This does not affect the file that's being cut at all. This is just the preview. Okay. So let me close that. Whoops, get back over here. No, get back over here. I accidentally hit the question mark, which sent me into that. And I'll pull that down. And let's go for another question here. Donna Botello says, how do you get epoxy to come out so nice and fluid like melted butter through a syringe? The short answer is I don't use syringes. I use small cups. We have a local restaurant supply house here, food service supply house, and this is what I use to pour into small areas or even mix up small amounts of colors. I will mix up a big batch of clear that'll cover all the pores that I'm going to do, and say I need, this is called a 3-ounce cold cup. I'll mix up a little bit of a color in here and then pour that where I need to pour it. If I only need a little bit of another color, I'll put some clear epoxy in this, add a little pigment, stir it up, and then pour out of this. Because I can always, squish the mouth and get it right where I need to get it. I don't use syringes. Syringes can be good or bad. It's as you're seeing, you sometimes have problems if the orifice hole on that syringe, if the hole out of the tip is real tiny, it's real hard to get that out of there. You might look for crafting syringes instead of medical syringes, and that may be a tall order. Or just have to look for larger gauge syringes. Um, Most of the 10 mil syringes I have found, it's very difficult, and depending upon the viscosity of the epoxy you're using. If you're using a low viscosity epoxy, then the smaller syringes will work just fine. But if it's a standard like a countertop epoxy, some of that stuff is pretty thick. Now, Martin Pearson says ink syringes have a larger hole. Todd Hanneman says most local hobby shops have syringes for epoxy. Sometimes they charge a little bit more, but it's a trade-off. Personally, I don't use them. I just see them as an added expense. As I said, I went down to that restaurant supply store and the package came with 500 of these 3-ounce cups. I think it was $6. And then this package came out with these 1-ounce portion cups. These are what you'd find at like a fast food joint to put ketchup in. And there were 1,000 of these, and again, it's like $5-6. So I think syringes are just an added expense and more waste. So Brooks Martin makes another good point here. Says he preheats the jugs of epoxy in warm bath for 15 to 30 minutes. And the plastic syringes, he cuts the tips off to open up that output. Okay. So, okay, that's pretty cool. So, well, thank you, Michael. But coming from you, that's one heck of a compliment. I just know what I know from based on what I've done, and I just constantly, I don't know. I just think of syringes as an added expense and more waste. And I was raised by people who went through the Great Depression, and it's you don't generate waste. Use it till it's used up, or do without. You know, so I don't like single-use things, and I don't like excessive packaging. But that's just me. I'll get off my soapbox. Let's see here. Well, Randy's Woodworking. This is an easy one. What kind of lubricant should I use on my Laguna CNC? Contact Laguna CNC and ask them. They made the machine. They know what kind of lubricant you need. It depends on the manufacturer specifically. Some of them are very specific. Some of them not so much. Give you an example. My Avid CNC, they say use lithium grease. They even sent me a little grease gun when the CNC got here. Now people say, oh, that's going to attract dust. You are greasing the bearing, not the linear rail. You're just greasing the bearing. 1, 2 pumps, maybe 3 on the grease gun. That's it. You're lubing the bearing, not the linear rail. Okay. So I've yet to have a problem with it attracting or collecting dust or anything. And if it's attracting or collecting dust, it's time for dust collection. So, yes, contact Laguna. They are the people to ask. Sometimes they are real picky. Sometimes they're not. So, see, Michael Garrier says, what problems can I run into if I enclose my CNC machine? I don't like all the dust it creates in my shop right now. First thing I would say is I don't know what kind of dust collection system you're running. I used to run a two and a half inch dust collection hose off of a shop vac. As you can see, I've switched over to 4-inch with a dedicated dust collector, and I would never consider going back. I'm not saying no dust is created. I will say very little dust is created. This 4-inch system and the dust shoe from Keith Moreland over at One Guy in a Shop, between this dust shoe and that El Cheapo 2 horsepower Harbor Freight dust collector, I have very little dust. What problems can you run into? Overheating. Um, I don't know if you're using a spindle or a router, but if it's air cooled, you'll want to make sure that there is some ventilation of some form, because the every everything air cooled needs cool air. Stepper motors get hot. That's all there is to it. That's the nature of the beast. They get hot. So if you're trapping all that heat in there, uh, it's got nowhere to go. You need some form of ventilation, be it, a fan blowing in or something like that. But other than that, I know lots of people that build enclosures for their CNC routers. Some of them have water cooled spindles. Some of them have air cooled routers. Just know that heat buildup can be an issue. Also, you're limiting yourself to you're limiting yourself on size. If you need to do a larger project and there is no way for you to tile your tool paths and cut something bigger than your machine table, um, you're limited there. So you are restricted to whatever will fit inside that enclosure. But if you concentrate on eliminating as much heat as you can, and pay attention to it, that may mean putting a sensor for a thermometer in there. Uh, I just got off of Amazon. I have one of these little digital thermometers, and you can see this is in here in my shop. That's outside in my lean-to. So I'm monitoring the temperature of both at the same time. You can put that remote sensor in the enclosure, and that'll warn you if you're getting dangerously hot inside there. But the main thing is going to be heat. If you can evacuate the heat and get fresh air in there, sounds counterproductive, but I mean just a filtered vent, and you don't need heavy duty filtration. Uh, I mean, it's not like you need a HEPA filter or anything, but just a standard furnace filter will do it. A small one, you know, on a vent out. So, let's see here. Um, uh, Brooks Martin says, how come when I draw a square and put 2 line segment from the inside corners of the square, i.e. crosshairs, okay, Aspire says one of the line segments is a duplicate vector? Well, is it, wow. I know you sent me a file earlier. If this is related to that file, we can get into this tomorrow on the members only. But if they would be intersecting vectors, but they shouldn't be duplicate vectors. Does that make sense? Or maybe I'm reading it wrong, you know? Yeah, okay. Let's let's talk about that tomorrow. I see where you're saying. Yeah, let's talk about that tomorrow where we can get into the file and I can check out exactly what you're talking about. Okay. So let's see here. Jovan Nikolic, thank you very much for the super stickers. How do I make a semicircular material? Ooh, wow. Let's see. Semicircular material. If you mean over here, let's go back over to my 2D view. How to make this material semicircular? You can't. It will be rectangular. Now, having said that, if let's say, for instance, I have a round piece of material and I've measured it and it's 500 millimeters across, 500 millimeters tall, I can come in here and I can draw a circle that's 500 millimeters in diameter and then do all my designing within that circle. Now, I use imperial measurements, Jovan, but so you would just simply do this with metric. And I would want to put my circle on my X0, Y0, which is right here in the center of my screen. And I'll go with 6-inch diameter. Make sure I'm on diameter, click create, and then that's my round piece of material. That's what I would design my file in. Okay. I would also, in this example, go back over here to job setup and change that to reflect the size of the project. So that's as close as you can get to creating semicircular material. If it's an oval or if it's a teardrop shape, you may have to get creative and sketch out the shape of your material. But there currently is no way in job setup to create anything other than a rectangle. It can be a square, it can be a rectangle, but those are the only shapes so far, I'm sorry to say. And thank you for your question. Let's see here. Let me go to some of the other ones here. Robert Jennings wants to know, do you have any suggestions or guidance for a round magnetic lighting on a spindle, I'm assuming, to help you see it to zero it better? The short answer is no. The longer answer is I'm going to make a note to put a link in the description to a video by, this is probably not exactly what you want, but it'll help. Maybe it'll give you a push in the right direction. Russ Tyndall over at Blue Line CNC did a video on adding LED lights under the gantry of his Avid CNC, which is almost identical to mine. I have not yet gotten to that. I want to do that, but he did a brilliant tutorial on putting LED lights underneath the gantry. As far as the ring lights for the spindle, I have seen people make that modification, but almost all of them have been a DIY type of a situation. I'm not aware of any off-the-shelf ring light specifically for CNC or a mill or any of that. That doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means I've not seen one because I haven't looked for one. There may be several out there on the market and people frantically typing right now. Okay, RB Woodworks just up Interstate 5 from me says Thingiverse has a 3D file. Okay, there you go. You can probably 3D print you one. That is such a popular thing. I'm kind of surprised nobody has come up with one. I think what it has to do with is the diameter of your spindle or your router. Is it air cooled? Do you need to keep that open? Is it something that's going to have to slip underneath the sides or grab hold of the sides rather than plug the air cooling vents? Um, so the diameter, and then the diameter of, I mean, there's a whole bunch of variables. So it just depends on your specific situation. Like I said, there may be some out there right now, but what's important again is heat buildup. If you're using anything air cooled, be it a spindle or a router, don't block that that bottom vent. I mean that router / spindle's got to stay cool. So, sorry I can't be more helpful than that, but I've just not gotten that far yet. And I don't intend on putting one on my spindle anyway. I'm just going to go with under gantry lights. Because to be honest with you, when I zero my Z, I use a touch plate. So, let's see here. Jeff over at Woodymon says, when adding text to a curve and increasing text spacing, is there a way to add a numerical value instead of the slider? Not that I'm aware of. Let's throw some text on a curve. Bring back up and share here. Let's go ahead and make my project a little bit bigger again. And we'll go 12 by 12. And I'm going to use this curve. So I'll select my vector, tap the letter N on my keyboard to go into node editing, put my cursor right here over that point and tap the letter C to cut the vector. Come over here, tap the letter C to cut that vector. So now I have two separate curves. All right, come out of node editing, and I'm going to, well, let's go ahead and get some text and come along. All right, and I'll just type my first name, and we'll close that. That's good enough for our purposes. So now I've got my text selected. Select the curve, and I'm going to come over here to text on a curve. And I'm going to click it. I've got maintain text size is the default selection. I can change that to fill up the curve. I don't want to do that. Now you've got this text spacing right here, and I believe this is what you're talking about. Is there any way to enter a numerical value? Because right now we're at -50 is the lowest amount of spacing, 300% is the highest level of spacing. Can you enter a specific amount here? No, not that I'm aware of. You're just kind of going by guess and by gosh. Now, this may be one of those instances where what looks good is better than anything you could enter here. I'll tell you something that I wish, Jeff, is that I wish they would show you where you're at, give you a number. You know, just kind of, all right, I just moved it, but what did I move it to? Now, again, let's say I'm at plus 10. Will the difference between plus 10 and plus 11 be that much? Probably not. I mean, I don't notice any difference, and I know I moved it. Again, I think it's one of those cases of what looks best to you, regardless of what this number says. So, the short answer is no. There's no way to enter a numerical value. You just have to basically use the slider. And see, the slider seems very sensitive. Yeah, but what can you say? Uh, Sorry, that's the answer. No, you can't do it. So, yeah, you're basically stuck with. You're basically stuck with whatever that slider wants you to do. So, okay, let's see here. We've got more questions coming in, and that's cool. I'll get to as many of them as I can. Now, let's see here. Jeff Mercer says, got a machine that is doing double letters. Any ideas? No. That's pretty vague, Jeff, and I'm sorry for it taking so long to get to your question, but that's extremely vague. Are you talking about, well, number one, are you using Vectric software? Number two, are you trying to cut multiple layers at once? Number three, are there double letters there, the vectors? Are you forgetting to turn off layers when you go to carve certain vectors? There's a lot of variables. This is pretty vague. So without getting specific, I really can't help. And again, I'm sorry it took me so long to get to that, only to say that I need a lot more clarification. So, let's see here if he has come back. Laser 314 says, I just had a thought. A laser can fit into the spindle. Okay. 0xy, then take laser out, put end mill in. Anyone seen something like that? No. I use a 3-way touch plate. I've never seen that before. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I use a 3-way touch plate to set my work offset, and I will make a note. I will put a, I've done a couple of videos on work offsets. I will put a link to both of those videos down in the description of this live stream as soon as I'm finished. I created a work offset, and I go through how to do this in both of these videos, step by step, so that you set your XY location to a known position on your spoil board. Then, in my case, I drilled a series of holes in X and in Y, and I use steel dowels to locate my material on that location. And I set it up as a G55 offset. And all I do now when I walk up to my machine is start Mach 4, or put those dowels in the table, mount my material against those dowels so that the corner is in a known location, take the dowels out after the material is mounted, go into the G55 offset, tell it to go to work XY0 and it zips right over to that corner every time. It's pretty much a set it and forget it type of a thing. So, but you know, if you want to use a laser pointer, you know, I mean, Bob Helt the Bridle says, yeah, he's done it. Sargon says some manufacturers have an offset laser that'll help you do that. Sure. I've just never needed one, never used one. I set those work offset locations. And as far as accuracy is concerned, when I did that pirate epoxy inlay, that was 6 days of carving, 15 separate colors. And I used that work offset and would carve, pour, next day bring it out, carve, pour, next day bring it out, carve, pour, and just went from there. It hit right on every single time. I have never had an issue. I set that work offset and I use it and it works like a champ. In fact, I haven't used my Avid 3-way touch plate to set my XY since I did that. I just haven't used it, haven't needed it. So, let's see here. I'm gonna have to start. Okay, let's see. John Old says, in the middle of my project, my system G code from and gave me error code of 22 when okay. I don't know what controller software you're using, but your best bet is to get onto the support forum or support community for that controller software, be it Mach 3, Mach 4, UCCNC, WinCNC, whatever it is. Get in and see what an error 22 is and see what you can do to fix it, because I don't know what it is. I really have no clue. So, let's see here. Jeff Mercer says using VCarve Pro and Mach 3 when spelling out any word doesn't do it all the time. I don't know what you're in reference to there, Jeff. I don't know what you mean. When spelling out any word doesn't do it all the time. I don't know. I don't know what you mean. What's it doing or not doing? So, okay, VCarve is the CAD CAM software, but what software are you running through that actually moves the CNC router? Now, is the error 22 coming up in VCarve, or is it coming up in the controller software? So, see, Bob Heltebridle, double letter previous question. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Martin Pearson says maybe it's duplicate vectors. That's possible. If you have vectors on more than one layer and you just select all and you're selecting all of the vectors there, it might be cutting double letters. So, okay. It's Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, the Jeff Mercer. Okay, thank you. Yeah, the control. It's coming up in the controller software. I would check with the support community for that software, and they can help. Chances are you are not the first one to have this problem. So if you go to that community and search for error 22, you will probably find a discussion on it. So, and that's a good resource that I think is massively underused. almost all CNC manufacturers have a support community or a support forum of one form or another, even if it's just a Facebook group. Usually it's not, but just about every, like I know Avid CNC has their own support community. Laguna does too. Legacy does too. Shops Saber has theirs. Uh, Shapeoko has theirs. Xcarve has theirs. Just about every CNC manufacturer has a support community. If you go to their website and look at support, hit that support link, you will probably find a support forum or support community. So, well, there you go. Machinedom Wood says Gerbil error 22, feed rate not set. So I don't know. Usually VCarve will not allow you to create a tool path with a 0 feed rate. And I know the folks who are using lasers and like a drag knife or a pen holder or something like that have an issue with that. So, oh no, that's feed rate. That's not RPM. That's what I'm thinking. What am I thinking, Mark? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. There is one last question that I'm going to have time to get to. And this one, I wish I had more time. First of all, let me say, if you are not subscribed to the Phoenician Artisan, if you're not following them over on Instagram, do yourself a favor and get over there. Um, they are making some killer projects. And I'll be honest with you. It says, I ran across a wobble chessboard. Any ideas and recommendations if this can be carved with a CNC? Thank you. Then I asked, are you using Aspire or VCarve? And he said Aspire. I had to look up what a wobble chessboard is. Now, if you don't know what a wobble chessboard is, check this out. I had to look it up. Chess pieces on a ball bearing. That's cool by itself. I'm sitting here pointing at that picture like you can see it. That's cool in and of itself. But now you've got the scalloped chessboard. I don't think and I know I don't. We've already been on for an hour. Tell you what, I'm going to talk about this next week. Yes, you can create this on a CNC. And because you have Aspire, it's going to be a lot easier. I'm going to talk about this next week because I want to explore this a little bit further. But the basics of this would be something like this. Well, I just don't have time to draw it out. I mean, we're talking about 64 squares out here. So I'll do a little bit of playing around and we'll talk about it live next week, if that's okay with y'all. Excuse me. I'll still take your open questions and answers, but Bob is saying set up a texture toolpath. Not quite. We'll be using Michael says you can create this in VCarve as well. I thought you might be able to, Michael, but if you're talking about using level clipping, I may have to talk to you behind the scenes on that because I know it's easier in Aspire. But yes, it could be created in VCarve too. I get what you're saying. I'll have to get with you afterwards. But yeah, if there's enough interest, I'll get into how to do that. Thank you for pointing that out to me. that's something I had never considered. Wobble chessboard. Dang, man, you guys do this to me all the time. You point me in directions. I got no use for it, but now I want to make one. But man, when you laminate that chessboard, when you put that sucker together, you had better be good about gluing up panels and what have you. So, okay. Well, anyway, um, thank you everybody for joining me. Thank you for the super chats and the super stickers. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to be joining my buddy John over at What If I Could, John C. On his live stream as soon as we're done here. If you want to come join us, YouTube will automatically redirect you over there. If you if you just want to hang and come over there and hang with us, everybody's welcome. We always have a good time over there. Let's see. Next week we'll get into the wobble chessboard. I will get in and have a chat with Michael about doing this on with VCarve. Very simple with Aspire. Well, I say very simple. Yeah, right. Uh, Simpler with Aspire, but I'm anxious to see what Michael has to say about VCarve. Members, tomorrow we're going to talk with Brooks about his issues. We're also going to talk about an issue Rich had earlier. We've got a few other issues to take care of in files you have sent me. Hope to see you tomorrow evening, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, or you would like information on channel membership, click that join button down there next to the subscribe button. A little panel will pop up and a video will play to tell you all about channel membership. I'd like to also give a shout out and say thank you to my friend Steve at Harneal Media. He does a bang up job of sponsoring marklindsaycnc.com, my website. If you are thinking about creating a web store to sell your CNC projects, Steve is the only guy that I will ever recommend. He's very competitive priced. He's very good at what he does. And he will take care of you. Tell him I sent you. I'm proud to call him a friend, and I'm proud to say he sponsors marklindsaycnc.com. Thank you, Steve, for everything you do. You'll find a link to Harneal Media in every video on my channel, and it'll stay that way as long as Steve will have me. So that being said, I will see you all next week. We'll play around with a wobble chessboard. And till then, go do something cool. Go make some chips. Go on, scram. Get out of here, y'all. Or follow me over to John's live stream. One way or another, y'all take care. Thank you very much.